It's Liz, Derry Public Library's information desk person, or one of them, and the resident film expert. I think I'd say well, no, there's others, but I'm the public um, resident movie expert. And welcome to Monday, a very blustery Monday. So today we're continuing my film series where it's not film recommendations, but a director recommendation. And today I'm going to talk about one of my favorite directors and director of a movie a lot of people know, Jonathan Demme, or as most people probably know him as, the guy who directed The Silence of the Lambs. Probably the preeminent horror movie for people who don't really like horror. Uh, Jonathan Demme is known for a lot of movies. Silence of the Lambs is probably his most famous, but also Stop Making Sense, Philadelphia, and Rachel Getting Married. So he was born in 1944, and he actually got his start under Roger Corman's wing making exploitation movies. Now, if you have heard the name Roger Corman before, it's an association with one of two things. B-grade exploitation films, or if you're a Mystery Science Theater 3000 fan, you got introduced to him via his really, really bad movies. And I don't think he was a fantastic filmmaker, but Roger Corman did give a lot of people, directors, writers, actors, Jack Nicholson's another example, people their start. And, side note, he was letting women direct and write movies when a lot of people in mainstream Hollywood weren't. So thank you, Roger Corman, for giving us Jonathan Demme. His first film is definitely not Oscar quality film. It is an exploitation women's prison film called Caged Heat. I do not believe we have that at the library. Don't think we can order that. But he started to get more legitimacy in the late 70s, directing more mainstream features. And in 1980, his film Melvin and Howard was his breakthrough. It didn't get a wide release, but it got a lot of critical acclaim, and it actually got one of the stars, Mary Steenburgen, Best Supporting Actress Oscar. Unfortunately, his next film, Swing Shift, that starred Goldie Hawn, was kind of a disappointment. He wasn't happy with how it turned out. He said there was studio interference and whatnot, but this is a great thing afterwards. He had like a string from 1984 onward of just really well received films, the first of which being the Talking Heads concert film Stop Making Sense, which pretty much is all but credited with revitalizing and reinventing what a concert film could be. That is on Amazon Prime if you've not seen it. He also directed Something Wild, which was Melanie Griffith's first big starring role, and Jeff Daniels. He directed the, not quite a documentary, but a feature-length monologue, Swimming to Cambodia, which starred Spalding Gray, and then the comedy Married to the Mob. So he gets Silence of the Lambs, and I actually want to read this excerpt as to why he was drawn to it, because this actually goes back to his old days. So in this interview from 1991, they ask, aside from the fact that it's a good story with good characters, what is it in Silence of the Lambs that really resonated with you? And Demme answers, ever since my days of working with Roger Corman, and perhaps before that, I've always been a sucker for a woman's picture. A film with a woman protagonist at the forefront, a woman in jeopardy, a woman on a mission. These are themes that have tremendous appeal to me as a moviegoer and as a director. And I think the fact that that was his approach to this movie is why Silence of the Lambs resonated so much with so many filmgoers. It wasn't just a crime story. It was more about the characters. It was more about Clarice Starling and her actual mission to solve this case. And when I talk about his filmmaking techniques, this will probably be the main film that I reference only because it's everyone's main reference point. And this film completely cleaned up at the Oscars. It won Best Picture, Best Actor, Best Director, Best Adapted Screenplay, and Best Actress for Jodie Foster. And this is a big deal because other than a few instances, horror really doesn't win. I can count the amount of times award on my hand. This, Kathy Bates for Misery, Jordan Peele for Get Out, Ruth Gordon for Rosemary's Baby, and if you want to count No Country for Old Men as a horror movie, which I do, Javier Bardem for No Country for Old Men. So the fact that this horror thriller not only won one award, but 5 in the 5 top awards, complete game changer, and pretty much got Demme into like A-list directorville. And what he did after that was he directed a quiet courtroom drama called Philadelphia, which I discussed last week, and that also made Tom Hanks the drama superstar he is now. And it is credited with giving mainstream recognition and helping get more mainstream acceptance for people who are gay and people who had AIDS. Film critic at the time, Roger Ebert at the time, called it groundbreaking in the vein of Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. Afterwards, he had some movies that weren't as successful. He did direct the adaptation of Toni Morrison's Beloved, which was spearheaded by Oprah Winfrey, which is actually, I think, overall a very good movie. And he directed remakes. The first one he directed was The Truth About Charlie, which is a remake of Charade. And then he directed in 2004 the remake of The Manchurian Candidate. Of his two remakes, Manchurian Candidate definitely is the better of the two, not only because I think the story of Manchurian Candidate can be transported into a modern setting, but I mean, I'm just going to be blunt. Denzel Washington is a much better actor than Mark Wahlberg. I don't know where we got the idea Mark Wahlberg could act, but so other things that he's done is throughout his life, his career, he loved doing documentaries. He did one about Jimmy Carter. He's done one about numerous musical acts. I think his final music documentary was about Justin Timberlake. He's done one on the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina. So even if he wasn't doing fictional films, prolific filmmaker. His return to fictionalized narratives was in 2008 with Rachel Getting Married, which stars Anne Hathaway. Fantastic film if you haven't seen it. It's a lot more akin to an Altman movie. It's not extremely structured. You're kind of just moving with the character through the motions. And to Demme's credit, he kind of puts you in the main character's seat where you're kind of feeling overwhelmed by everything happening. And his final film was Ricky and the Flash, starring Meryl Streep. He finally got a movie with Meryl Streep in, which not his best film, but definitely a fun and a far more complicated character than I think someone else could have done with that. And I think that's one of the reasons why Demme endures as a director, is because he likes flawed people. He understands that no one's either all the way good or all the way bad. And he's interested in the more in human aspects. So with Rachel Getting Married, the main character, Kim, is a girl who's in and out of rehab. She is a whirlwind of problems and self-persecution, but he still looks at this and goes like, I want to make a movie about this person rather than, oh, she sounds annoying. Or Ricky and the Flash, which is actually a good subversion of the cool old lady trope, takes a woman who basically abandoned her family to go be a rock star and actually didn't do well at it, and still manages to try to find the good in her. And that goes back to like Philadelphia, where he took a character, a gay man with AIDS, who would still be rather reviled in the early 90s, and decided to make him the most sympathetic character in that movie. What are his technical tropes, I guess I should say, or the things that you'll see in a lot of his movies? He loves close-ups, and you see this especially in Silence of the Lambs, and that helps give kind of an intimacy to the film. Rather than being a passive observer, you're actually right in there with the conversation. Obviously, we see this with the conversations between Clarice Starling and Hannibal Lecter, and a little bit later when Starling and her friend Ardelia are trying to solve the case, we also have that close-up again. And he also loves to do sort of the main character POV, which a lot of directors will do, but it serves really well, especially in Silence of the Lambs, where in many cases, Clarice Starling is the only woman in the room. So he utilizes that POV not only to just show her perspective, but to show how it feels to be kind of an outsider in her particular situation. He has some amazing editors working for him. Was just telling a friend that one of my favorite just 10 seconds of film is in Silence of the Lambs, and it's the cut from the ambulance to a dropped receiver to someone running to find somebody, and I'm like, that is just a perfect use of editing and music to create a sense of urgency and tension and actual fear and panic. But it's I think the way I'd like to close this, though, sort of going back to, his interest in flawed people, is there's an anecdote. So if you ever want to own Silence of the Lambs, highly recommend the new Criterion release. they were talking about some of the controversy that surrounded Silence of the Lambs. So when it was released, the character of Buffalo Bill definitely, we're not quite sure what his thing is. He was interpreted by many to be transgender or gay, and while the film and the book try to say no, that's not the case, there were still a lot of activists at the time who were in the early 90s like, look, we barely have character representation in film at all, and when we do, it's a serial killer who chops up women and wants to make a woman suit. So they were justifiably pretty upset about that. So this is a story from behind the scenes when the publicity rounds for the film were starting to go, and there were people protesting and handing out flyers as to why they were dissatisfied with this film. And Jonathan Demme comes in and holds a flyer and says, has anyone seen this? And his friends were like, oh, you don't need to read that. Don't pay attention to that. And he said, no, I did read it. I think we should all read it. And obviously his next film was Philadelphia. And I don't think that it was just this that influenced that. He was someone who was involved in AIDS advocacy before that and had friends who were involved in that. But I think that's what made him such a great filmmaker, is he had empathy for other people. And I think that's what makes a good filmmaker. They're willing to look beyond the technicals and say, who can I tell a story about? And I think that's why he endures as a filmmaker. We lost him in 2017, and it's sad because, I kind of think, what else could he have done? But he definitely left a mark on American film. And if you haven't seen any of his movies, I would definitely start now. So have a great day, and I will see you tomorrow with What's on Netflix.